everyone again. My name is LONG-THÄNH. You can call me Larry. Today I'm sharing with you a classroom story from my reading writing B1 class. But let's take a look at the title of the talk here. Reading is not scary anymore. And this line actually came from a student of mine. And for me, it captures the biggest change that I observed after the course. But today's talk is not about a perfect extensive reading program. It is about what happened when I started seeing extensive reading as extra reading at home and started using it as part of my classroom materials design. And my main message is very simple. Students will read more when the text is right, the task is light, and the feeling is safe. And here's today's roadmap. I will first explain to you what I tried, where I began as complete novice in ER implementation. Then I will explain to you what I tried, and then I will share with you 6 lessons that my students taught me after the course. Then I'll move into the remaining problem of the course, sustainability after the course. And finally, I will share with you a practical ER design that any of you can try tomorrow if you like with any readable text. So my talk moves from problem to practice to student voice and finally to design. For your information, my first extensive reading implementation began in October 2025, just last year. And before that, most of my reading lessons follow a familiar pattern. A reading passage, pre-teaching a vocabulary, comprehension questions, and then checking answers with students. There's actually nothing wrong with that procedure. Many of us teach like that because we believe that this does help our students to improve their reading in some way. And I did it too, over a long time. But doing this, I realized a problem. A lot of students stopped at the very first unknown words, and their first reaction was to check the words in a dictionary. Reading in such a way became less like exploring a text or following a narrative, and more like doing a reading test. Later on, I realized that the problem was not students' laziness, but the problem is reading anxiety and accuracy habits. Probably the texts chosen are too hard, the tasks are too heavy and exam-oriented, and students start to develop the habit of decoding vocabulary and grammar instead of the text itself. So my question changed from why don't students read to what kind of support helps students keep reading over a long time. And let me now show you an overall picture of my first ER implementation. For this part of the journey, the teacher's work actually began months before the semester started. We, 4 teachers in charge of the Reading Writing B1 course at our faculty, sat down together during summer break. And we ourselves experienced about 100 credit readers in the Footprint series by National Geographic Learning. And for your information, the editor of the series is Rob Berry, sitting over there. So we sat down together and we experienced 100 credit readers. And from these, we selected about 12 to 15 books that best matched our course book themes and that seemed to have the strongest potential for student engagement. Before I delve deeper into the procedure here, let me tell you a little bit about a feature that sets my reading class apart from other reading classes. One thing that I tried to build is the reading culture. Thanks to Professor Rob Waring's advice and the assistance of a teaching assistant and a mini library that I created myself, my students had about 20 minutes free reading before the session. Every session began during the whole course. What I mean by this activity is during the first 20 minutes of the course of every session, students had about a couple of minutes to pick a book from our mini library of about more than 100 books, and then they sat down, and then they spent about 15 minutes reading freely without doing any comprehension questions. The purpose of this activity was to build the reading culture, like I said, where reading could become a habit for students, or even better yet, a hobby as well. Now let's talk about what happened after the first activity, settled in reading. After usual things like, attention-grabbing images or thought-provoking questions for discussion, we gave students text, and the students experienced the text for the first time. But at this stage, I usually encourage my students to use simple icons to mark their reading process instead of doing comprehension questions. For example, they can use a heart to mark something they love in the text, a question mark to mark something confusing to them or something they disagree with, or probably an asterisk to mark something surprising, insightful, or shocking to them. Those icons might seem too simple, but it actually gives students a pathway to interact with the text without feeling pressure from doing comprehension questions, right or wrong answers. Also at this stage, I usually remind my students that you do not need to understand every single word or every single detail in the text to enjoy the text. You could skip, you could guess from context, you could visualize scenarios, or you could make any assumptions that you like, in order to protect the safe feeling of reading. I sometimes let my students listen to the text before reading it because I wanted to give them an easier and more comfortable entry into the text. Then came talk. At this stage, students shared what they had read in pairs or in groups by answering questions that tap into both their feeling and their thinking, such as what surprised you most, which part stayed with you most, would you agree or disagree with a certain point made by the author? Then came reports. Students reported what they had discussed earlier in pairs or in groups, using simple frames provided by me. Use like we think, we felt, or one question we still have is. And finally, reading moved into writing. To be honest, we didn't want to design heavy follow-up tasks after the reading stage because we still wanted to protect the safe feeling of reading. No heavy tasks at all after that. But because the course was reading and writing integrated by nature, so the best thing we could do was to connect what students had read to what they later wrote. So students could supposedly use some ideas and better yet some language used in the text in the later writing. For example, after reading LONG-THÄNH, which is a story about a solo cat having his first hunt in life, students wrote a definition paragraph on what courage means to them. Or after reading Dinosaur Search, students acted as the researcher in the search, and they wrote a report of the search. Or after the Call the Wild here, students wrote a definition paragraph on what freedom means to them. One more example is after making a deal, after reading this one, students wrote an opinion paragraph to express their thoughts on whether to bargain or not while shopping. So we tried our best to connect what students had read to what they later wrote. So these examples illustrate that reading was not something for us to check. Reading was something for students was a stimulus for students to think critically and respond, a source of language for students to learn incidentally, and a real reason for students to write later. Here are a few interesting key statistics that I obtained from the course. There were 26 post-course responses to a survey. 21 out of them reported reading English at least once a week now after the course. 15 of them reported reading daily or several times a week. I'm well aware that these statistics are small classroom data, and I'm not trying to claim any large experimental results at all, but for this classroom, the pattern here is so meaningful. ER is not just about adding more pages to your reading. It's not just about adding more time to your reading habits. It's also about changing the student's relationship with reading in a positive way. Now let's talk about the lessons that I learned from my students' voices. The first one is feeling comes before strategy instruction. A lot of students reported that they now feel more confident, more comfortable, less fear when they see an English text now. And this reminds me of one fact. The fact is that strategy instruction is not enough when the emotional entry into the text is not okay. So before reading, I try to open the text with something very human, like an image, a dilemma, a memory, a prediction, or a personal question. To be more specific, before reading a book about gliding across the Gobi Desert, I asked my students, you need to cross the desert. Would you choose a scientist with GPS or a local guide? Would you choose a jeep or a team of camels? I know those questions are simple, but they actually gave students a reason to care about the text. The ER principle here is very clear. Text should give students something that is captivating, appealing, attention-grabbing, and worth reading. So I tried my best not to pre-teach anything in the text. The thing that I tried my best to do was to create curiosity in students and created an atmosphere where everything was open, was ready, and was captivating enough for students to keep going with the text until the end and even again later. The second lesson I learned is choice is not enough. Choice needs coaching. ER extensive reading often says that students should be allowed to choose whatever they want to read. And I totally agree. But what I learned was if students are allowed to choose any book they like and without any instruction from the teacher, that is not enough. A lot of students at the beginning of the course still believed that they had to choose difficult books because if they didn't do so, they didn't feel like they were making any progress. And that's a common belief among many students and even teachers too. So I had to teach book choice. We used the 5-finger rule, which I will then adapt into a 2-finger rule only, thanks to Professor Rob's advice. We previewed topics and genres. Students recommended books to each other, and they had permission to change books in between. The last point here matters a lot. You know what? If students get trapped with a text that is too hard or too boring, then extensive reading becomes painful reading again. So I tried my best to create a lot of coaching instructions for students. So choice without coaching is not real autonomy. The third lesson I learned is social reading can lower the affective wall. Extensive reading, sometimes is imagined as silent, individual reading outside the classroom. But in my classroom, social reading helps students to feel supported. A lot of students reported they liked activities like book chats, peer recommendations, movement activities. They liked moving around the class, hearing different perspectives, and they liked not just sitting and reading from a book. But there's one little caution here. Social reading does not mean high-pressure performance. Some students also reported disliking activities like presentations or debates because those activities created extra anxiety for them. So I tried my best to make reading social, but not performative. To keep all sharing safe, but not like a public exam. The fourth lesson I learned is tasks should make reading visible, but not heavy. Students could do things like enjoyment checks, emotional journey tables, 2-sentence diary entries, book chats, quick recommendations, or selection of one vocabulary item that they feel useful. These activities actually gave me very, very concrete evidence of students' genuine engagement without punishing them for giving the wrong answers to comprehension questions. The next lesson I learned is strategy instructions is emotional supports. A lot of students reported using these strategies. And I realized that strategy instruction is also emotional support because it tells students that they can continue despite whatever ambiguity happens to them. If I have time later, I'm more than happy to explain them to you. The final lesson I learned is writing gives students something to say. Writing is usually deemed to be very hard if students have limited ideas or language to write. But in my class, reading made writing more possible because students could tap into the ideas and the language in the text for their later writing. But my design principle is do not use writing to check whether students have read or not. After the course, the challenge changed. At the beginning, the challenge was student fear of reading. They were too cautious of reading. They were too cautious readers. But after the course, the real challenge for us was a lot of students mentioned that they were not able to continue ER. They had deadlines to meet. They still faced difficult language. They still had limited book choice, short attention span, and a personal preference for other habits over reading. So the real challenge for us from now on is not how to begin ER, but how to sustain it. And I do believe that we need an ER ecosystem to sustain extensive reading over a long time. The ecosystem should include motivation fostering, create easy access, create variety, and also regular checking moments between students. Now, I want to make this talk a little bit more practical. I'm going to give you a design that any of you can try tomorrow. If you are a reading instructor now, and tomorrow you can select any text that is readable and you try this design. First, ask what kind of feeling can open the text safely and in an appealing way for students. Second is, how will I keep students reading in a fluent way and not in a dictionary-driven way? Response, what lights response will show engagement without testing their comprehension with right or wrong answers. Talk, how can students share safely with one peer or two? What small writing or speaking can grow naturally from the text? For example, before reading, students can predict a choice. While reading, they just follow the main problem, the main idea, or the main narrative. After reading, they might share their thoughts and feelings with just one peer or two, and after that they write 3 sentences from the main character's point of view. And trust me, that can be enough for a reading session of 45 to 60 minutes. Let me close with this idea. We, teachers, should design for discovery. Our main job is not to be the main source of language. Our job should be to curate experiences where students are able to explore, discover the text by themselves. What I mean is, your job is to select text appropriately, design tasks lightly, and to protect the feeling of reading, instead of making it sound anxious for students. For me, this is the heart of the talk. Text gives input, task gives direction, feeling gives energy. And like one student said, now I feel that reading is quite fun, or I enjoy English reading more because I understand text better and I feel less stressed. These are the key changes that I want to hold on to for my talk today. Not perfect reading, not native-like reading, but less fear, more confidence, and more willingness to keep on with reading. Thank you very much for your listening. Here are the references that I used. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
So, first of all, hello everyone. So, first of all, I would like to say thank you for your presentation. And I also say sorry because I'm a bit late, so I skipped the first part. And I have a question for you that which level of the students that we could encourage them to use extensive reading? Because I am playing the role of teacher, so I would like to see the link and the connection between extensive reading to ELT. Yeah, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your question. Your question mainly centers around how we teachers can, what level of students can we implement extensive reading, right? Let me define extensive reading in a clearer way. The way I understand extensive reading is about reading for fun, for pleasure, for enjoyment. A lot of people may believe that reading these books, native books like these, do you know these? Do you know these books? This is Atomic Habits, and this is Sapiens? Yes, Sapiens. These are books that are written for native speakers. And a lot of people might believe that reading these books is the best way or the best reflection of extensive reading approach. But extensive reading is just about reading for pleasure. Anything that you read of any level of texts is actually extensive reading. And one way that you can do is to use graded readers. By graded readers, I mean books that are level appropriate for a certain group of learners. Let me give you an example of the Footprint series. In the Footprint series, there are books that are from the lowest level to the highest level, from A1 elementary, A1, A2, and then C2 as well. So if you think that your students are in the group of, in the level A2, for example, you can choose credit readers out of this level. So these credit readers make reading more possible without stressing students about reading hard text to level up the language used. Does that answer your question? Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
Yes, so for your very intriguing presentation, and my question is, what scaffolding activity did you use in?
So your question centers around how could we scaffold the reading process for students, right? I got asked this question a couple of weeks ago, and I will tell you the exact thing I said 2 weeks ago. Luckily enough, and coincidentally enough, I supervised a group project, a research project on scaffolding extensive reading. And the project was completed a couple of months ago. There are a lot of strategies that we can adopt to support student reading process. One thing that we can do to support their reading process is to provide materials. A lot of students feel that it's not possible for them to buy a lot of books. And as teachers, we are able to invest in our career by buying students books that they can access anytime. The second thing that we can scaffold the reading process is scaffold the emotional, the affective engagement that students will have with the text or with the reading process by giving students questions that tap into their thinking, their opinions, and their emotions about the text, or their emotions with the reading process. For example, how do you feel about the text you read today? Are there any useful things, any useful pieces of information you have gained after today's session? Tap into their thinking, their emotions, and they will realize that reading is not just about doing comprehension questions, it's about exploring the interest of the text. That's the second thing. There are quite a lot more, but I think that access to material, and affective engagement are two strategies that I implement quite frequently in my class. Do we have more time for more questions? Five more minutes. Are there any other questions?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your sharing. I miss the house sharing with you as a personal information. What do you think what you said that overall the improved materials were simple and interesting for themselves. What about the higher level and mostly
So
enough focus?
can you ask the question again without the microphone?
Yes,
Without, without the microphone, yes.
I want to share some part. When you share your opinions of your presentation, you just focus on the reading content, something like that, interesting, and it's very helpful for students who love this. But at a higher level, because I said it's more advanced reading, it helps to reach a lot of academic contents. So can you help me with some experience, like how you connect and it's a collective activities in the classroom? Does have different level groups of students can join together to create our and that is our goal. The second one, input and task. This is first phase of the lesson. And the final one, engage and create energy for the learners. Focus in longer, which is most important or more important.
The task or
The task, input and task or energy. Is that rather effective or productive? Which is you spend more time?
Okay.
And how you control and how the students with different level students in one class or in the group.
Okay.
At a higher level, at a higher level, that's in the region biggest or advanced.
Can you summarize the first question? I mean, for the first question, can you summarize it for me? I forgot the first question.
The first one, they have to create some collaborative activities for the outputs of higher level reading. Especially different level students in one group or one class. Then the second one, the time duration you divide into what's in longer, what's in just like your
Okay, thank you very much for your questions. For the first question, it's about how do we select material for a group of mixed students?
Yes, it's
Right.
higher
And how to
level.
higher levels. Okay. I might not be in the right position to answer that question because my talk is mainly about reading writing B1, right? But I've had some experience with teaching reading for higher level students too, so I'll go a little bit beyond the scope of my talk. So I selected for higher level reading classes, I selected materials that are more authentic, not written for a specific student's level. I usually used readings, articles that are published online by National Geographic Learning. There are quite a variety of topics there: travel, education, nature. You yourself need to experience the text, and you yourself need to understand the student's level first. So at the beginning of the course, I administer diagnostic tests, and I determine their common level. Of course, all classes have mixed level students, but we need to identify a common level, and we are not able to tailor to every single student in a large class. That's the key thing. So just tailor your lessons to the common level first. That's the key thing. Yes. And use National Geographic Learning as a resource for your teaching if you want to use readings that are more for higher level students. Yes, and I've been using it for my IELTS-based class. You can give it a try. For the second question, it's about the input and the task, or feeling, which one takes longer. Let me go back to the common sense of a reading class. A reading class should be all about reading. But to make it look a little bit different from free reading outside the classroom, we need to scaffold the reading process. We need to give students support, different kinds of support, to help them read better and to help them become more confident in their reading. So instead of just giving the texts, there should be activities.
or texts that can help students to see how well they understand the text or how positively they view the texts. Those are the activities scaffold the reading process. Of course, reading should take the largest amount of time, but reading alone does not create a class. There should be activities, light tests that go a long way to help that process. Whatever test you design, ask yourself a question. Does it take longer than the reading process? Does it take longer than the amount of reading time or not? Ask yourself that question and keep all tests under the amount of time of students' reading time.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Han. Your presentation was a wonderful start to our morning. Everyone, please give him another round of applause. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to present this certificate of appreciation to you. Please receive this certificate as a token of our appreciation for your contribution today. And everyone, please go to area A, right, and go along reception hall, right, to